for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I was trying to get in. I couldn't get in with Zoom, but I'm on the phone. So I'm here. Go ahead.
Okay. We're gonna get this meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order, and we're gonna have a roll call right quick. Mayor Pro Tem Villalobos.
Here.
Councilmember Bunker.
Here.
Councilmember Shell Allen.
Here.
Holdover Councilmember McLeod.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Paul, I don't believe he is on. Holdover Councilmember Paul. And Mayor Domini is present. So, thank you. Let's rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank y'all. All right. We had a couple of things going on tonight. One of them was that we wanted to go off and hand out some plaques to our former council members. And Mike, you're not here, but you're here in voice, and you're on the phone, so you can't even see it. But anybody who's on Zoom and the people here in the room can see it. We have some nice plaques that say, like Mike McLeod, City Council Member, Place 4, in appreciation for your service, dedication, and hard work in the City of Martindale, Texas, presented this 8th day of September 2020. And so we do appreciate y'all's time that you've given us as council members, and you can come by the City Hall and pick this up, Mike, at your leisure. How's that?
Oh, okay. Sound like a winner. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Tonight, we also, let's see, the next agenda item is public comments. We had not received any from the public prior to the noon cutoff, so there's nothing to read. And we have one member of the public, Mr. Sam Clinton, here today, but you didn't have anything on public comments to go on with it. So we're going to skip that piece of it. What I'd like to do while Mike is here, can we skip down to agenda item 7A, which is discussion of possible action on adopting the tax rate. Setting a tax rate and levying taxes for the support and use of the municipal government for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020 and ending on September 30th, 2021, including procedural provisions. Now, why we want to do that is that it requires a 67% quorum, which is why we really needed either Mike or Mary to be here tonight to go off and go allow us to go handle this item. So, Jared, you have sent out, well, we sent out the ordinance with the read ahead, I guess. It says an ordinance in the City of Martindale, Texas, setting the tax rate and levying taxes for the support and use of the municipal government for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020 and ending in September 30th, 2021, and including procedural provisions. The tax rate is that we're proposing is 0.434. Stand down to there. There it is, 0.434, which raises about just under $8,000 more in actual dollars than in previous years, of which almost 4,000 of that is due to new tax roll buildings, property. This is what is currently supported in the budget. We'll get to here in a little bit later. So with that, do I have a motion to accept this?
Hey, real quick question on that rate change.
Yeah.
How much would it raise the taxes for say a $200,000 home, let's say, for example?
If it was previously appraised at $200,000, it actually lowers the taxes.
Oh, so if you were paying tax on your tax rate would be lower this year than last year.
The rate actually went down almost 5%, the rate portion. But if the appraisal rate goes up, well then,
Yeah.
by more than that, then it goes up. But
Yeah,
this
their
actually
market
is,
value.
this is actually a reduction in the rate that we set.
Yeah, I
significant
didn't get a
reduction.
chance. I didn't really get a chance to look. I'm not really prepared, so I didn't really get a chance to look at it. Okay, thanks for the explanation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And let me
All
just
right.
let me just chime in, Mike. Thank you for joining us. As a result of you joining us, we are able to, as a council, lower that property tax rate for our residents. If you would not have joined us, it would have stayed the same. So thank you for being here.
Okay, well, we got to take care of the taxpayers. We're all taxpayers.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for the explanation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we got, Sonya's made a motion to accept this ordinance. Do I have a second?
Second.
And Jan, are you in favor?
Aye.
And Mike?
Aye.
Motion passes 4. That's the one that we really needed here for you, and we appreciate you. Mike, you're welcome to stay and vote, do what you need to go do the rest of the night.
I appreciate it.
We'll do
Okay,
that.
guys. Anything else you need from me? You need me to hiccup? You need me? Anything else I can help you with while I'm here?
We're going to do the budget. Why don't you stick around if you don't mind, another 5 minutes.
Okay, no
Go ahead.
problem. I'm here. Continue.
7B. All right, we're doing agenda item 7B now, which is discussion and possible action to adopt the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020 and ending on September 30th, 2021, authorizing certain adjustments to the budget and including procedural provisions. This is the one we went over 2 weeks ago with the council. We also had a public hearing a week ago. And it is in your packet, and Gary's tried to get it on the screen, I guess.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
Pull it up. At least the subject page. All right. The summary shows that we've got a total revenue plan for the 2021 year at 884 in revenue, and the expenses are at 882, but that also includes the emergency fund. So expenses are really at 868, I guess.
Yeah, so the general fund is near, and utility fund are near perfect balance, at least less than $1,000. And then there's a $1,000 remainder in our special revenue fund, and that's in the court restricted. So the general fund and the utility fund are at balance with the tax rate that was just approved and reflected in this draft budget, in the property tax revenue line for the budget is 342.
And we've still got the 15 grand in there for the emergency fund. All right.
It includes a capital improvement fund savings of $4,000 and emergency fund savings of $15,000.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Okay, so
Someone may move to accept the budget, pass the budget
Second.
amendment, or the budget ordinance.
I'll second it.
Second. All right. Lisa, go forward.
Jan, you in favor?
Aye.
And Mike, you want to vote on this?
Man, I don't know anything about it. I don't know if I could even make an educated guess. I guess the best thing for me to abstain, I guess. don't
Got you down as that. All right, with that, we got 3-0 with 1 abstention. And that's enough. And these were all roll call votes, so All right, let's go back up now to, get back on track with our report from the last. Thank you, Mike. That's, I think, all we needed before, so get the stage go.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, like I said, I felt like I shouldn't, I wasn't involved with the budget. That'd be the most honest
Yeah.
thing to do. I mean, either way, I hate to say something I ain't having done research on. So, okay, I'll hang around if you need me to, but y'all, okay, no problem.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. No problem.
We are at the mayor's report. So the first thing I want to talk about in this report was COVID-19. We're continuing on with our park closure due to that's the status of the other parks in the area. And I have no input from either San Marcos, New Braunfels, or the county concerning their parks and or tubing companies right now. So we're going to stay closed until that changes. The municipal court remains closed to the public. We're still working the appropriate authorization to allow public access, and we just haven't got to that yet. The good news, of course, is that things have flattened out, specifically in Caldwell County. There was a little spike over the last couple of days, but I believe that was due to some the state's been cleaning up some of their unassigned cases that they had. So I don't think they're new cases. I think they're cases that had occurred, and they're trying to figure out where they belong, what counties they belong. But the good news is the case count is really going down at statewide, Hayes County-wide, and Caldwell County-wide. It's still very much lower than the others. The bad news is our positivity rate is terrible and has been since we began. That has something to do, I think, with our number of tests are much smaller than everybody else's, but only 6 people go talk to them. But COVID's still with us. It's not gone away totally. Next thing to talk about is the census. The first 4 months of this was trying to get people to self-report, and you can see the self-reporting numbers on the chart up there. We're abysmal as a city from a self-reported number. However, we have now moved out of that range. Enumerators have been in the city, walking, knocking on doors, touching houses that residences and addresses that have not self-responded, and so they are collecting that information now. It's due to wrap up by the end of September unless the courts get totally involved here. But I think in Caldwell County, you can count on the fact that we're really going to wrap it up around the end of September. Again, it's extremely important to please fill out the census information. This is your one chance in 10 years to go make the numbers come out right and come out accurately. So please do support that. The Caldwell County CAD organization has published their annual budget. They did that on the 24th, I think, of August. And they had a public hearing on 9/1. Of course, we did not have the same time that it was published now, a meeting, so we didn't get the word out. Our support goes up slightly from the prior year's estimate. Our piece of the budget, it went to 9,436, and it was just slightly over 9,000 the year before. However, we need to note that they gave us as they wrapped up the year, they had outperformed their budget for the prior year, and it got us a refund of almost $500. So I don't know how to play that into this, but all in all, I think that they're living within their budget and then giving money back at the end of the year. I have no problem with what they've got cooking there. The other things that are coming up, the Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool has a Board of Trustees election in progress. as a member municipality, we have the right to vote, kind of like CAPCOG and CAD system, et cetera. So places 1 through 4 on the ballot. The terms are for 6 years. The city council will vote on this issue next week at the next meeting. I'm just giving you a heads up here. The only information I have on the CML folks is what they mailed out, which is a little resume paragraph on each person, and we will send those out. We'll scan those in and get those sent out to the council members before next week.
Sir,
Yes.
isn't this only the, I noticed it says intergovernmental risk pool, isn't this only the insurance risk?
Yeah, that piece of
Part
it.
of it, it's not like the whole technically authority, this is just the insurance pool.
I said I put the copy of the ballot and all that in this packet, but I did not, so didn't make that in. But we will get that sent out for next week. So be on the lookout, that's coming. The Cherryville folks, that development has a contested case hearing scheduled for October 5th at 10 a.m. It will be via Zoom. So you can participate if you want. Those interested in attending must register in advance, and the process to do that is available at City Hall. I've got the paper copy right now, the Zoom credentials, and how you register. So if anybody is interested in listening to that, they can come by City Hall and get the credentials. Cherryville, as everybody remembers, is outside our city limits, outside our EPJ. However, it is, and it's downstream from us, so there's less impact on us, but certainly impact on our neighbors. It will certainly impact Fentress and those folks that are between us and Fentress. So those who are interested can come down and get a copy of how to get on there. And we also are a member of the Capital Area Council of Governments, CAPCOG for short. Because we're a city with a population of less than 10,000, we're entitled for one representative at the General Assembly. That representative on the council prior to today has been Councilmember Paul. So we'll need to select a new representative during the coming meeting. And we'll put that on the agenda for the 9/15 meeting. So those council members who are interested in serving on CAPCOG, the opportunity is coming. And with that, I'm going to turn this over now to 5B, which is the city administrative report. Gary.
So real quick, we mentioned TML election. There's another TML election ongoing. Council members, you should have received an email from me, I think last week. The Regional 410, which includes Austin and the surrounding area, almost CAPCOG plus, how I think of it. That has a election for, I think, 4 seats to serve on that board, and I think the response date is sometime next week if you're interested. All right. I want to focus today's report on police operations. I know this has been something that council members have been quite interested in recently, and the public in general, but specifically for council members, I just want to follow up on this. So council members have raised concerns regarding police coverage during evenings and weekends, and responding to trespassing complaints, loud noise complaints, river and park patrols, parking and traffic enforcement, particularly near the Allen Bates Park and Skull Bridge. And this has been going on we've received a number of concerns or since the coronavirus hit in April. So just kind of want to give a status of where we're at and look ahead of where we're going. So as most of you know, and we discussed in the budget, the police department is staffed with 2 full-time equivalents, with 1 full-time officer, who's our chief police, and 3 part-time officers. Those 3 part-time officers take up 80 hours in a 2-week pay period, or 40 hours in a 2-week pay period. The schedule is intended to provide additional weekday evening coverage and provide some patrol presence during the weekday for limited office hours for police chief. We're talking onesies and twosies here and there. It's not an everyday thing. And then also intending to get to an 8-hour coverage on Saturdays and Sundays. Those are our goals. There have been 2 occurrences in the last 2 months of limited, very limited, or no coverage on a Saturday or Sunday. And included in these slides, we can briefly go through them if you have any questions, but I included the last 2 months schedule, actuals, and then a current look ahead for what we're planning for September. Some of the challenges that we're facing in police operations is the availability of our part-time officers has been changing recently, especially since coronavirus. One of our officers has been responding to the coronavirus with the Lockhart Fire Department, and he's been tied up with that. His schedule has not been consistent the way that we had expected, and it's starting to level out and become normalized now, so we're hoping to improve our scheduling. Also, one of our part-time officers recently was promoted to battalion chief, and he's running the fire department, Austin Fire Department at Bergstrom International Airport, which is a great benefit to him, but it also requires some scheduling adjustments. And those things have contributed to some of the gaps in coverage that we've seen from late. Other challenges we're facing is our operations are dependent on a single officer on duty. So if that officer is tied up with an investigation or responding to a call, if another call comes in, he may not, in this case, they're all officers, he may not be available to respond to other calls. Or if there's a conflict or something comes up, family emergency, or for whatever reason, if they call out the last minute, we don't have the ability for, as a larger police force tonight, to cover that employee's absence. A lot of times the police chief will be on call, provide some limited on-duty support, but that impacts our ability to staff all the days and hours that we intend to. And then another challenge we're facing is vacation and compensatory time accrual. Our police chief, he's been managing his personal time, but he's up against vacation, use or lose. And he works nearly every holiday, if not every holiday. I'd say it's rare that he doesn't work a holiday. And what that does is, under the contract, city operations, that holiday time gets added in as a future day off. He doesn't receive extra compensation for working a holiday. Instead, it becomes comp time that he can use to take off in the future. Well, when we have near the ceiling of vacation, use or lose, and the holiday time, which must be expended or used by the end of the calendar year, it's fiscal year, then we have a very difficult scheduling construct to manage. And we're getting better at it, but it's requiring more time off on his part to get us in a position where we can respond better to instances where part-time officers aren't able to attend. And then there's also, with the part-time officers, there's pay period limitations. And so sometimes if there's as an example, if there's a wreck on Highway 80 and they're responding to that call, they may be on scene late into the night. Well, there's 3 officers fulfilling a single full-time equivalent. That person's essential extra time that was unplanned on schedule cuts into the availability of all that person and the rest of the part-time employees' ability to take on additional hours. So if there's a wreck that they're responding to late in the night, or possibly even 2 within the same paper, I don't think we've had one of those recently, but at least we've had 1 or other instances where they're responding to calls. It limits our ability to staff those Saturdays and Sundays or those weekday evenings as as well as income. So it's a challenge, and we're trying to overcome it, but there's not a lot of flexibility between the part-time officers. If if we're overburning their hours, then the police chief needs to step in to take on those hours, and as he's stepping in, he can't burn down his holiday and vacation time that's essentially maxed out at this point. So we're kind of stuck. We're working through it. It should get better in the future, but it's a challenge. And then another challenge is the city council members and I think members of the public have used their personal contact information to request law enforcement assistance. And that is not the appropriate way to initiate a police law enforcement response. I encourage everybody in the community, council members included, to utilize 911 or the non-emergency dispatch number if there is a scenario that you are aware of at the time that it's happening. One of the problems we have is when personal contact information is used, often that call gets redirected to the dispatch service center anyways. And so it really doesn't provide any direct benefit or expedite a law enforcement response. So I encourage those who are using that personal contact information to instead use the 911 or the non-emergency dispatch. And then for complaints that are raised after an event, I always want to know what's going on, so does the police chief, but learning about an incident after it has taken place limits our ability to respond to it and investigate that occurrence. So if you become aware of something or somebody brings something to you, I would encourage that you take the opportunity to tell people about who to contact, when to contact. Still let us know that there's a complaint and we'll want to address it and make plans to address it in the future. But raising concerns after the event happened doesn't provide us the ability to investigate and take action against it. So so you'll see down at the bottom of the screen, you can't read it, but that's where we have posted the non-emergency dispatch number on our city homepage. Right below how to pay your bill online, there's the phone number for the non-emergency dispatch. However, there are some opportunities we have going forward. We can leverage the county law enforcement resources to fill patrol gaps. If we do not have an officer on duty and 911 or emergency dispatch is called, then they will dispatch a sheriff, constable, whomever is closest in the area to respond to the call. Depending on the nature of that call, if there's a report that's needed or an official action taken, they will get the police chief or one of our officers to respond, to take the report, to manage that scenario. But they'll at least respond quicker, or they will respond in areas where we don't have police operations currently in terms of staffing and schedule. We are able to get greater weekday coverage with part-time officers. So as previously we had 2 full-time officers, and one worked primarily the weekends, one worked primarily in the week. With using part-time officers, we are able to extend our core hours during the weekday for an additional 1 or into the evening, 8, sometimes 10 o'clock at night. Whereas with a full-time officer, we may not be able to do that because then they'd be working 7 days a week if they were filling those same shifts. So this does give us ability to spread that 1 FTE over more days, and that's one of the reasons why I like using this part-time officer for now. I think it's starting to get better. I think it will get better in the future, and this is one of the reasons why I'm able to have that flexibility throughout the week. So to address these challenges when we're faced with gaps in service and complaints coming in, I encourage everybody to use 911, the non-emergency dispatch number, to get law enforcement assistance. And even though we're not on the clock, we don't have an officer on the clock, we can still have law enforcement support for our community. And I think that, just want to point that out.
Before you get off that, I don't know how many people in Zoom land understand it, and certainly the council should understand it. This non-emergency dispatch number that's shown, we pay a fee every month, $6,000 a year total for that service. It is not a problem to use that service. We should use that every chance we necessary to use it. People should not feel like because we're not calling a city number that we are, we're imposing on anybody, or that is a service that we pay for, that we're need to utilize. It's the best way to get a hold of these guys, because it goes and it leaves a trail. We actually tested that trail during this past month, where we had a call in that was non-life threatening, part of a new call, and we wanted to make sure that it worked just like we thought it would, where it would get captured on the record, and we did that, and it works just fine. If you call that number, that event will get captured, and therefore we will be able to go back and say, okay, what time of day did this happen, when did this go down, etc. So, as Jared said, please feel free. If you see something that you'd like to call the police, and if you know it's that the city offices are closed, call that number, and they will get the right people. All right.
I have a question on that though. So basically what I've heard is that, council members have called. I know I've called to the city before for the speeding trucks that were over there with a community member that got in touch with me. So in that case, I'm not supposed to call the city office, I'm supposed to call the non-emergency number to report it?
If you want a law enforcement assistance at that time, if there's a violation or unsafe action that's taking place, I encourage you to call the non-emergency dispatch number.
So
if it's just a general, hey, I'm aware that this thing is happening, that there's speeding there, and I just want to make sure the city's taking steps to patrol the area, I think providing a comment through our online form is the way to go, with the understanding that it's after the fact, and then going to be able to take immediate remedial action.
But do you understand that everything, how you said, do you think that's being pro-community policing?
I think in terms of getting the community assistance that they need at the time they need it, I think that non-emergency dispatch is the way to do it. I think in terms of community engagement, like I said, this is not to discourage anybody from sending in complaints. It's just to set expectations in concerning how complaints are processed. We're not able to investigate and take action.
So when
What do you think happens when you call that dispatch number?
they dispatch somebody?
Yeah, who do you think they dispatch?
They dispatch, I know I've called before to the dispatch, and when I did, they called Harris
Yeah, that's
from
exactly.
the sheriff's office.
So that's a quick and easy way of getting them, and it gets captured at the time. If you call down here to the city office numbers, they're going to have to go try to track them down. Well, they're going to get on the phone, not on that radio. The radio goes immediately to them. Go ahead.
So one of the things, and I love what you said, Councilman Villalobos. Now, I've practiced community-oriented policing for 20 years. And there's a difference now. The speeding problem that you're talking about is not community-oriented policing. That's problem-oriented policing. Problem-oriented policing, absolutely. That online complaint thing, hey, we're seeing an issue. We identified the problem. We start addressing the problem. The committee, what they're trying to say here is what's happening is we've had 2 instances so far where we get online complaints, and the last one we got is actually, it was a felony crime that happened, but I wasn't made aware of it until a few days, 2 days later, when I came in and see the the email, had that person called either 911 or the non-emergency line, one of us would have been dispatched with the sheriff's department or the constable's office, whoever's closest would have got dispatched to identify and take action on that problem right away. We're wanting folks to utilize dispatch service because, like the mayor said, half the time, and we've all, if you live here in Martindale, you know, half the time your cell phone don't work. The way the city's here, if we're not physically in the office, if you call the police department, if I'm not sitting at one of the desks, nobody's going to answer the phone. If you call that number, they're immediately going to call us on the radio. And if, like Jared said, if I don't have coverage, like tonight, we have coverage till 8:30, 10 o'clock. We're done, I'm at home. We don't have any coverage. If somebody calls that line, if it's a call that the sheriff's department can come out and handle and there's no paperwork whatsoever, the sheriff's department's going to respond. If it's a call that paperwork's going to be involved, the sheriff's department's still going to respond, secure the scene, and they're going to call me, and I'm going to come out and deal with everything.
So nobody should be calling the office or coming in if they want to file a report or to call or need assistance, call that number, don't come in.
No, they can come in and file a report. What I'm saying, if it's something that needs action right away, we need folks to call. Because if you see a crime or you see something that you think needs action right away, if you call the number, we're going to go right away. If somebody stole all your chickens, but you know, I'm just saying, so if somebody stole something from the house and stole your chickens, you could come down here and report it to me. You know, you could come and say, hey, is the chief in or is an officer on duty, and we can take the report right here. Or you could call the non-emergency line and we come to your house. Because that's something that's already happened. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, or a noise
complaint,
complaint, or something like this, or
the easiest thing, if it's in progress, I would say call.
You see the indicate, well, we're supposed to do this and not this other one. We'll take them all. We just sit there and say the best thing to do is use that number.
I know, because they can get confusing because I'm hearing two different things.
No, yeah, and I see what you're saying, but what we're trying to say, the easiest way to say it, if it's something that's in progress, needs immediate law enforcement,
Call 911.
call 911 or call the dispatch line, because they're going to immediately, you call that number right there, they answer the phone dispatch. That's how they answer.
I've called it before.
And they will immediately call one of us on the radio.
right. Like, that's not to discourage people from sending in complaints of things that are happening within the community that we need to address.
Oh, the problem-oriented side of it's fantastic. You know, we had complaints about the dump trucks. I've been out there numerous times. Dwight Dugan sat out there the other day for 2 hours. You know, that's a problem somebody's perceived. They send it to us. We address the problem. So we still want everybody to use the online complaint forms, but if it's in progress or needs immediate law enforcement assistance, or it's a crime that you're witnessing, we want people to call that number so they can get us on the radio.
So the remaining slides have the schedule from July, August, and looking ahead to the first 2 weeks of September. And I'll leave it there for any questions regarding this information.
We had in the problem about posting this kind of stuff, because basically once you know the hours of the year, that open the door to something else. But, so we're really kind of hesitant about posting that, but for the council approval, that's okay.
And then so on here, what I could see is that throughout the weekdays, like basically, and I mean, we could talk about it up in the open, or we could go to executive session if you want to.
We don't have an executive session capability in Zoom right now, so.
With Lisa and Dan on the video and the attorney, we're not able to go to executive session?
I don't have to kick everybody off.
The problem is, we could do it, we just need to provide I could send a new meeting invite via email real quick, and then after that meeting, come back onto this meeting.
Let's schedule one up for doing that in a later time. I don't know what to do with executive session for.
I could talk about it now. Yeah, so on here, so I can see that throughout the weekdays, like on Monday and Tuesday, like our latest coverage is like 6 p.m., maybe 8 p.m. is like the latest. So it seems like to be very heavy, like our heaviest coverage on Mondays and Tuesdays, but then on Saturdays, it's until about 4 p.m., maybe 8 o'clock p.m. the latest on the weekends with only one officer. Would our blotter match up with the indicators for the police presence earlier in the week during these times rather than the weekend? Because did we get a police blotter?
Yeah, the blotter goes for everything that's handled all the way throughout the month.
Yeah.
Everything.
But it would correlate kind of like with the days.
No, it doesn't it's any activities that are listed, so if.
But it's
we
not
saw
by
it-
date?
Yeah, by date,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did we get a police blotter?
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, like, are we that busy on Mondays and Tuesdays where we need that much coverage earlier in the week rather than on the weekend, or is it like that because that's availability of the officer
There's a availability issue.
with the officer?
Yes.
That's part of it, and then the other part of it is, given the non-police tasks we frequently task the police chief with, having another officer come in on Monday or Tuesday or any day of the week and provide some overlap in coverage allows the city to catch up on police paperwork and address those items that have come up. And most of that overlap is very limited on a day-to-day basis. But Mondays and Tuesdays work well because that's often when there's a city council meeting. I'm in the office. If there's something that I need to discuss with the police chief, that we can that afternoon. And that could be why you're seeing a few more hours in those days.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I guess once everybody does it, I by no means am, like dissecting it. It's just like some concerns that I've had from community members as far as with what's going on. And, they brought it up to my attention, is why I sent the email, and also the concern with what's going on at Skull Bridge. And, I'm all for one, like for the river, but here we are, we have a free-for-all over there, and then it's totally shut down over here at the park, which I understand that's the city, and that's somebody else's.
I think, Mayor, we're going to talk about the Skull Bridge in a future agenda item.
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, so we can, and that might be next week, but.
Yeah, so as far as that, it's just what I was noticing is that how heavy the coverage is, like throughout earlier in the week versus on the weekend, and you would think it would be busier on the weekend than on earlier in the week.
Well,
There are the number of things on the blotter that day. It looks like Sundays and Mondays are the big days, based off of what happens on the blotter. But not everything shows up on the blotter, right? I mean, we don't put a ticket on there and everything.
we don't put the parking violations we deal with. I mean, on the weekends, primarily, the officers are spending 90% of their time, they never leave Northwest River Road. They go from Skull to Phase 1, to Skull, to Johnson Street.
So that's directly addressing the kind of issues that you've seen, we've all seen down there. But I think we're trying to get those. The problem is that we just don't have.
The police.
Yeah, and we got one guy. He can't be in 2 places at once.
I mean, you'll see on the blog when it's coming up, there's a Sunday issue there where Sunday got very, very busy at Skull. And we couldn't do anything, and I actually came in and helped the officer on duty because we had a dog bite.
Mm-hmm.
And that dog bite took over, that was almost 3.5 hours. Because nobody was at home and the dog kept running into the doggy door. So it's one of those, we devote a large portion of our time on the weekends to just trying to deal with the Skull Bridge situation, people trespassing on Mr. Clint's property, people trespassing, well, people going into the city park when they're not supposed to. And if we don't, what happens? The minute one person goes in or one person parks in a no parking zone, you'll have 50 cars there within 5 minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I see what you said, that the scheduling is because it's like that, because of the officer availability. So,
Yeah, it's
because you don't have enough officers to do the coverage on the weekend.
No, previously when we had a second full-time officer, he primarily worked, I think it was 12 hours on a Saturday and 12 hours on a Sunday and a little bit on a Friday night.
Some Thursday, Friday, some Thursdays, but primarily Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
And so,
And he could only be in one place at one time.
right. So some of it is a change in our staffing model, going to part-time versus a full-time officer.
How many hours is considered part-time?
No more than 32 per officer.
So with Germer, is he still considered part-time?
Yes.
His schedule's been difficult for us to work with his other responsibilities.
But it's not take 3 people and maximize their hours. You work 3 people into getting a full 40 hours. That's the task he's given.
So the task is to like juggle 3 different people to complete 40 hours?
Yes.
That's what we budget.
And that 40 hours with those 3 people, that's considered part-time for those 3 people, is 40 hours a week?
40 for them total, 40 hours a week is the equivalent of 1 full-time equivalent. So yeah.
3 officers for 40 hours.
Yeah.
Now, what we saw in the strategy inputs was that public safety issues were pretty high on the list. They weren't number 1, but they were pretty high on the list. And so what have we done in our budget this year? Well, we're trying to go off and make sure we get second cars so we can double up. Maybe the third one, a second new one, and then pick the other one. And getting lined up to go get that third officer back. Back in 2015, there was 3 officers, full-time officers here at the city of Martindale. So that would be the logical next person to go off and add to the staff. But we don't want to do it until we've got the equipment to support all that. That would help in the situation. So it's not like we're ignoring it. You can't snap your fingers and then one time. And we continue to push the resources that we have to the locations that seem to be creating the biggest stress, safety, which is river access since COVID.
Unless there's any questions on this police operations report, the last item was a quick snapshot update of where I'm at with the annual goals as we're closing in on near the end of the year. Some have been completed, most are in progress. 2 of the objectives may not be completed by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year, but made a lot of improvements and continue to set high goals, aim to achieve them, and see how far we go. So this is where we're at in improving the efficiency and effectiveness of city operations. the implemented strategic vision and planning process. We're nearly complete with that, and we'll be wrapping that up in the next week or two. And then the voting opportunity within the community is made possible. So that's where we're at with the annual goals, and that concludes my report.
All right, that brings us to the finance end. So Dwayne, you're up.
Okay, where should I start?
Why don't you cut it here?
Okay, you all should have received the final report in your packets or also by email today. The beginning with the bank statement balances as of today. You see the breakdown of the operating accounts at First Lockhart Bank. Those 6 or 7 accounts total approximately $85,000. Where we sit on September 8th, we're about 3 weeks away from the end of the fiscal year. So we've got adequate funds to make it through the end of the fiscal year. As you go into the second half of the slide, you see the funds that are in TexCool, $207,000 in the emergency fund, and then the PFIA overflow fund contains $170,000. You see the second line item there, $125,000. That is the money that's available for operations, which I should not have to tap this month. We'll see how soon the property tax bills get out in October, and that money starts flowing in for the future. You also see the long-term capital improvement fund. The excess fines continues to be being paid down at a greater rate than has been in the past, as our sales tax revenues are stronger this year over last. Okay, on the next page we have the budget report for the general fund. Through 11 months, we're at $575,000 in income. Some of the highlights, all of the budgeted property tax revenue has been collected. The municipal court revenue is down nearly half for the year, but the sales tax revenue you see is up significantly. Personnel costs are within plan. The percentages over on the right column, by the way, should be at about 92% for 11 months. So as you look at those line items, you see that there are not any real particular concerns. Go over to the next page, you see the bottom line for the city is at $132,000 net income through this part, and that's through the year, and that money is largely in the bank in that $125,000 balance that's in the PFIA fund. The next pages include vendor payments over the past month of August. So as you scan through there, you see various vendors in the operating fund, nothing particularly out of the ordinary. Then the next page or report is the utility fund. So you see at $270,000 year to date. That's at 90% of the budget, so that's right in line. Expenses at 261 are a little bit ahead of budget, or a little bit over budget, I guess you would say. We did have a transfer in from the general fund that has kept this fund ahead of plan for the year. So that one appears to be cash flowing as well. Then you see the vendor balances as of August, the vendor payments for August. And nothing out of the ordinary there. And then the last report is of the Community Development Fund. And this is an accounting of funds that we received from the COVID Relief Fund. So far, we've received $13,915. The budget for that grant is $59,575. And then you can see the various line items of how that money has been spent. And I'm in the process right now of turning in all the details on this grant to the Texas Department of Emergency Management. And then I guess we can decide if we're going to pull down more money.
Well, the way it worked was they gave us 20% up front, which was the $13,915, and then any others we spend it and then turn in the expenses. So I think we're in that mode now. We ought to try to turn it in every month, so to speak. But as you were pounded away on the keys today, I don't know how much trouble that is. Well, it's better to back it up for a quarter and then turn it in. It turns into a pumpkin in December. So,
yeah, it's, now that I've learned the ropes on it, it wouldn't be that hard
to do monthly
to keep it up to date, but I just don't see that many more expenses.
Well, the ongoing one, Ruben, is a big one, and then
If we do the room.
Yeah, not all this.
but we have to hurry. We got to do it by December.
We can do that.
If we're going to do it.
Okay. All right, and so the fiscal year will end here in a few weeks. The audit firm and I basic confirmation templates and everything, so they're ready to start, and that should go through much faster this year. So I think that's all I've got.
Any questions out there, Lisa? You got any questions of Dwayne?
I'm good for the minute.
All right, Jan?
Yeah, I was just confirming that this grant we received, that's the COVID grant, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they call it Coronavirus Relief Fund, I believe.
CRA.
CRA.
Gotcha.
All right, thanks, Dwayne. That brings us to the judge. Tony, are you out there?
I'm here. Good evening, everybody. You should have your reports here. Jared will pull it up. There we go. All our reports are current, have been sent and transmitted. As you can see, our numbers are not quite what they were last year, but they're going in the right direction. The worst part is over on that, so I expect to see significant increase here in the coming months. And anyway, it's fairly self-explanatory, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
What I'm looking for is, when are we going to have us one of our court dates? This is between you and Kent to go off and work the backlog of dockets, the cases that are.
We have had we've sent notices out and letters, okay, giving everyone a couple of different options, and we will have Zoom. How many is yet to be determined. Whoever opts to will be. We're going to be holding Zoom hearings the end of the month.
Good.
So payments based off of that would come in to September or October?
No, we're going to be. This will be held by right at the end of the fiscal year.
So they'll be October.
Yeah.
We're going to get.
Yeah, and from a strictly, I mean, without going into too much here, the whatever it brings in, it'll bring in. But right now, that's our only option. The OCA is seriously disfavoring anything done in person right now, and I agree with that. I mean, there's no reason to, and for an efficiency standpoint of the court, there's really nothing to be gained by it. This is just this is the environment that we work in now and that we're going to be dealing with for a while. So everything is done over the phone and conference and Zoom, and it's and that's just the way it's going to have to proceed. And with the recent staffing changes, like I said, we're through the worst part, obviously. You can look at our numbers and what the Dwayne was going over there, and that's, I mean, that's basically what we started. March, April, May, June, July, with a minuscule fraction of the activity coming through the court that would have been during that time. And so
a couple of months ago, you said that there was like 33 cases still pending on, waiting for court dates.
Yes.
Is that still at 33, or are we going up?
I don't know the exact number. I think it's about 40.
So this is a full day's worth of activity, Mr. Wymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how many people opt to take the option that's being set forth by the court. So
that's correct.
I mean, maybe doing this via Zoom changes it somewhat, but personally, my preference is always to have at least 20, if not 25 to 30 people set up for a docket, because it makes it worth the city having me devote time to doing this to get it knocked out. So I think there's some merit in that.
Yeah, I agree.
Tony?
All right, that's all.
Judge Tony, I got a question.
Ms. Bunker, yes.
Are you and the clerks coming into the office on a regular basis still?
Letty's in there. I come in usually on weekends, or I was in there today for a little while. Letty's in there.
Okay, she's taking fielding phone calls and.
Oh yeah. She's
okay.
Yeah, we got her working right along.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's working in the office.
All right.
And has been.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Raising a hand. Let's go to the police report.
All right. Thank you.
Tell them about the dog fight.
Last Sunday, had a gentleman walking down Johnson Street, was bit on the ankle by a dog. We were able to identify the dog, track the dog down. I said it ended up turning into about a 3-hour ordeal because the dog had a doggy door to run in and out of the house with. Somebody got home. We were able to identify the dog owner. Dog owner was issued a citation for their loose dog. Dog was taken to the animal shelter by animal control to be quarantined, and a full incident report followed.
The dog is back or not?
I do not know. I haven't been contacted by the animal shelter to let me know if they've released the dog from quarantine. However, the dog owner was able to provide up-to-date vaccination records. However, we still quarantine the dog.
Our process, or the proposed current process, and the proposed form, like the form is to get animal control to sign off that this is not a dangerous dog. Did you do that?
It will be done. That's the last step of the process. Based on the fact that there have never been any issues with going to evaluate, that animal. Animal control officer Garrett will evaluate.
Anybody else got any questions? Jan, you got any questions?
How's the person? Was it a minor injury, major injury?
Minor, puncture wounds on the ankle. It actually occurred right across the street from your house, man.
Yeah, I heard.
So he's okay. He was treated for minor injuries, and I'm assuming medical bills will be taken care of through civil process.
Okay.
All right. Lisa, you got any questions?
Thank you for asking.
No.
All right, let's move on to the board report. So we got the historic board and nobody on Zoom. I can tell that from the historic commission. Park, Sam, you are here. You want to talk?
Where should I stay? Right there, okay.
You can look out the Zoom land.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank the city council and the mayor, the city administrator for increasing the budget on the parks to $19,000 for the next fiscal year from $14,000. I just looked at the budget and I can see that $4,500 is still remaining in the budget for this year, and it will be moved over into the general fund and not be thus remaining in the park budget. The mayor and I have talked quite extensively about the survey that needs to be done on phase one. A couple of companies have been reached out to. Their bids have not been quite acceptable. So I'm hoping by the end of this fiscal year, by the end of September, that more movement will be made on getting that survey done in phase one. As the chief of police mentioned, my small parcel of land in phase one is a great place for cars to park when they want to go to the park, either under the bridge or to the park. Recently, within the 60-foot easement of 1979, I put up about 7 or 8 T-posts right on the line between my property and the 60-foot easement, which has prevented people from turning in and parking on my property, which is adjacent to phase one. So if this survey is done, the city and myself can make strides in identifying the boundary lines on the north side of phase one and the south side. These are things that need to be done in order to proceed with items that we'd like to do in phase one. I also would like to give kudos to the mayor to coming down with me in phase one recently when I identified, along with the Friends of the Park, where we would like to place the pavilion, which is about 30 by 40 feet in size, where we would determine where 20 parking spaces would be. And also we identified in the sort of cul-de-sac turnaround around the big pecan tree where we would like to have about 6 picnic tables. I've also noticed down in phase one, there's a lot of castor beans growing there, which is a totally invasive, poisonous plant, and that should be removed as soon as possible. I myself, as a volunteer for the park, have probably been down to Allen Gate Park 50, 20 times this summer, watering the plants in the park. We've also discussed about a possible maintenance person for the summer to empty the trash cans. But as we determine when the parks will be open, of course, we don't know. The budget for the parks going into next year possibly might need a little adjustment, a little increase if we find we need a maintenance person besides the volunteers to help us with the parks. I did do a short volunteer day with a couple of Friends of the Park on Monday. We cleaned out some Chinaberry and did some weed whacking down in Allen Bates Park. But again, going into the fall, it'll be the best time to do elimination of hackberry and elm trees in phase one, which would require volunteers to sign a release form or other volunteers, Friends of the Park,
that'll be helpful in doing the removal of invasive trees in phase one. So I'm encouraged about the signage that the mayor and I have spoken about, some better looking signs for the park, and the grant that we could possibly receive to do improvements in phase one. So all of these things are encouraging to me, and I think to the city, in order to bring people to Martindale to enjoy our river and the park. So that's all I have to say. Are there any questions?
I have a couple of questions, Sam. Just out of, I mean, just for better understanding, you made mention that there were a couple of survey groups that submitted either bids or proposals, and you stated that they were not acceptable. So can you expand on that a bit, please?
I don't know if we've made an official determination. We just have not yet made it an award. Where that last left off, as you know, when we're doing professional service contracts, and we follow the state law on that, you select the best qualified, you negotiate price, continue on down the list. Last we left it, we were negotiating price. So there were the term, and now it's all dependent on the results of those negotiations.
Okay, and obviously it has to fit our budget.
Correct.
Okay. And then the other question, I was unaware, Sam, that you own property. Did I understand you right? You own property that is adjacent to the city park. Where exactly is that? And do you have a survey, a current survey for that property as well?
No, I don't. The property is located, it's a small triangle that is on the upstream side of 1979. So my property is also on the other side, downstream side of 1979, but as the property line dissects, it comes across the highway, and then it's possibly about a half an acre or so that is a small triangle adjacent to phase one. And so I have never had a survey done because it has actually changed, because when the highway department built the new bridge, the new bridge was moved further downstream from where the old bridge was. So my parcel increased slightly, but I don't know where the boundary is, and that is something that we, as working with myself and the city, is trying to determine where that property line, my property line, is in how it is adjacent to phase one. But from what I've seen, the majority of the parking, if it's not in the easement of 1979, they have been parking on my property and then going over to the park from there.
So Sam, if I could, to clarify.
Yeah.
The city is not undertaking a land survey for the purposes of demarking where Mr. Clinton's property is. The purpose of the survey is to identify where our city-owned property is for the purposes of future planning of that space. And so as a consequence, you know where your boundary is.
Yeah.
Because his boundary will be bordered by the river, 1979, and our boundary. So that would benefit him in that way, but that's not the purpose for the land survey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And thanks so much. And I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have maybe a low-level volunteer group working on pouring the other concrete pads for the other metal garbage cans that I have that I'm going to put adjacent to the parking lot. And I know some trees have been marked that are dangerous trees, particularly a large one by the Walker property and by the parking lot. We may talk to another arborist about trimming that tree because it does have some branches perhaps that have to be removed. But I would like to see more input from the city, from this, and volunteers that can help us with the park going into the fall. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to planning and zoning. Lisa, you got anything you need to talk about?
Just a little bit, just as an update. The amount of phone calls that I personally receive have dramatically reduced, which has been nice. However, there are still some about other properties in town, as well as I am aware that we need to be mindful that I'm aware that there's one already specific use permit for short-term rentals, and I know that there's 3 more coming in. So that'll be something that'll be up and coming. That's all.
Are we ready to do one next week?
Next week, as in Tuesday?
As in Tuesday?
I do believe there will have to be a public hearing, and it will have to be put in the newspaper a certain amount of days in advance. So
should we? Yeah, but shouldn't the Planning and Zoning Commission review that before we do that, or no?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, I understand, but
To me, it would,
We should receive the application first, and
we got the application in. It came in last week.
there's 3 more that I personally am aware of that are coming in, and I would recommend that which is part of the reason I wanted to kind of gather folks around, to do this in one public hearing to minimize the expense of the newspaper article for those people who are applying.
I like that idea, but I also, I can't remember it, but some of our ordinances have time limits on them, that we only have a certain amount of time after we get the application, before we have to
Yes,
have a decision.
I will reach out tomorrow to Sylvia to determine exactly the date of the application that was received, and make sure that we have our timelines, as well as contacting those who I know are just waiting to submit theirs. And we'll get that ball rolling by the end of the week.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any questions for Lisa besides me? No. All right, Riverboard, Joy Younger, was she on earlier? Charlie was. He's still there. Charlie? Let's see, can you unmute him?
I can ask him to be unmuted.
Yeah, I unmuted.
All right, you guys got anything you want to tell us?
Let's see. So Joy's not on here.
You can tell us no.
We did have a meeting, and I think even in the previous city council meeting, Joy stressed that we're kind of resistant to changing any zoning to a commercial activity in the floodway.
Yeah.
So that, I think that was probably it that Joey's going to talk about. I think we do want to ask the city to provide a proclamation for, and then this will be later, but we're working on a proclamation to support the eyes of the San Marcos River people that have been cleaning up the river and picking up the trash in the river. So that'll be coming up in the future.
Okay.
Other than that, I think that's it.
Anybody got any questions for him? Raise your hand. Nope. Okay, thank you, Charlie.
All right.
And that brings us to agenda item 6, consent item, minutes and accounts payable. Everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Anybody got, comments? Let's see here. Lisa, you got anything you want to say about the consent item?
No, unless you need me to make a motion.
Jan, you got anything to say about the consent item?
No, I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes and accounts payable.
One second.
And Sonia seconded, so that leaves Lisa vote.
Aye.
Count minutes and count payables are acceptable, 3-0 votes. That brings us back to good old agenda item 7C, discussion, consideration, and possible action to adopt the citizen participation plan policy for the GLO Community Development Block Grant. So when we get to the next agenda item 8, second one, we're going to talk grants. One of the things that the grant administrators, the Langford folks, have asked us is to meet all the requirements for applying for this grant. We needed 2 things. One of them was a citizen participation plan. If we review the grant tonight, next week we will vote on the application to say yes, we do want to apply. We will get it put in the paper, and then we'll have a month to go off and hold, I believe, 2 meetings, which is called for by this, to review this with the public. The agenda item 7C is the written ordinance, excuse me, not ordinance, the plan on how we're supposed to go do that meets all the GLA and FEMA, and I don't know, it's supposed to, according to Langford folks, it meets all the requirements so that if we go follow this plan, we will qualify. We will not get kicked out because we didn't do what we were supposed to go do. So we sent this out last week. I hope everybody had a chance to read it. It is basically says, I think that we have to do this twice. The real kicker is we have to have it, a Spanish-speaking somebody there, but we got one of those on staff that we're gonna grab, and I think we'll be able to go make this happen. So anybody got any questions? Let's start with Jan. Jan, you got any questions about this?
No, not at this time. Can you hear me?
Man, say talk.
Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, not at this time. But like you said, we have to still put this out to the public, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This is plan to do that. Lisa, have you got anything you want to speak on that?
No, sir.
You, Sonia?
I'm get this moving.
Sonia has made a motion to accept the plan.
I second.
To adopt. Who seconded?
Jan.
Jan seconded. And Lisa, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, Lisa's a yes. Passes 3-0. Plan is adopted. All right, very good. The next piece is the addendum to the Martindale purchasing policy. Another piece of getting all the things in line for this is that we have to have in our policy that we will follow the CFRs, which is the certified
Code of Federal Regulations.
Code of Federal Regulations. We got an expert here on staff today. Now, so initially the Langford folks wanted us to go adopt the purchasing policy, of which I said we already had one. I let them have a look at it. They came back and said if we'll adopt this, add this addendum to our purchasing policy, we'll be in good shape. So, does everybody, did we send this thing out? No, he did not.
I think it was included with the read.
It was, okay. So a copy of the purchasing policy is part, or section, excuse me. We have a financial policies and procedures that we approved a year ago, conditionally with putting some additional information in there. And a section of that, one of the sections, section 8, is the purchasing policy that was originally adopted in 2018. No, it was originally adopted in 2010, and then was amended in 2016. So that's the official copy. There you go. It's page 33 of that thing. You go all the way to 33. And so this is going to be another amendment to that, and we're just going to add this addendum to it, which lists the CFR paragraphs that we need to pertain to this grant. So I guess if there's anybody got any questions, we're going to start with Sonia. No. Lisa, you got any questions?
No, sir.
Concerns?
No.
Say again.
No.
And Jen?
So where's this purchase policy? Is it anywhere online, or is that something we have to go look up at the office?
You got to come look at it at the office.
Okay.
Right now, we want to put it online. I want to put it online. Well, if you recall, we did this last September, 50-something pages. What we needed to do was add revision control by paragraph to it. And that was Lisa's comment. We haven't got that done yet, but we don't have to have that to make it a real policy. So.
Okay. I make a motion, we accept the addendum.
All right.
I'll second it.
Lisa seconds. And Sonia says aye. All right. Perfect. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 8. Details of the hazard mitigation grant. And so if you go to this chunk, right quick. So this is getting to the details now, what we're trying to go through. You recall back in May, I think, is when we went over all the different grants that we've done. What we're going to talk about tonight is that line called CDBG. I got the
Community Development Block Grant.
Yeah, I got the acronym back there. And we're going to go over the details associated with that. That is a large chunk of money that was made available through the, some of the money came from the 2015 flood events, a little bit of it. Most of the money that has been awarded for our FEMA to the state came from the Harvey flood event. And if you recall, last year in 2019, there was an effort at the county level to write a hazard mitigation plan that we were part of and participated in. That is a requirement to be able to open the doors for this, to get in some of this money. We got that done in February of this year, I believe, is when they finally published that. And just a few months ago, we approved our participation in that, approved that plan as that applies to us. The council did that. And so that gets us the door open to this type C grant. If you go to the next slide. In that hazard mitigation plan, it talks about doing some mitigation activities to reduce the flooding along Northwest River Road. In this picture that you're looking at on the screen, and it's in the packet, that would be project 1 and 2. And so those are the line items in the grant that we were going to go try to address. Project number 4 is one that sort of crept up since then as we watched the destruction of the intersection at Quail Run and Northwest Highway as trucks run over the ditch. We're about to go create a problem, we think, that could be very devastating to the Northwest River Road if that road can wash out if a few things happen. And the project 3 was some flooding down at the intersection of Main Street and 1979 that occurs with minor rain events. So within the last few months, when this grant information came available, a few things changed. We were going to go attack those, try to go ask for 1 or 2 of those projects, ask for all 4 of them, maybe get 1 or 2. What turned out was that this particular grant opportunity has a minimum application of $3 million. Unless you need $3 million or more, don't come ask, is the answer there. The city match that typically can be 10% or whatever would 15% or 25% or 20% would have precluded us from going after that. But in this case, the city match is 1%. So for $3 million grant, we have to pay $30,000. That would be our portion. That's not so scary. And there's a different break point at $6.7 million for a small city such as ours. If we stay below that, we maximize our point credentials, point scoring for the grant, enhance our ability to go off and go get this money. And then because we were going to be talking about doing some stuff on the streets, Judy Langford's troops said, you know, if you're going to tear up the streets, if there's water lines under there and there's something they need to fix, now's the time to fix them. So we talked with Steve over at the water department. Sure enough, there is some stuff under there he needs to get rid of. It's the old pipes that actually have asbestos in part of the thing, and they need to stop using those if this is a good time to go off and do it.
Where is that again? Where are those pipes?
They run pretty much from the Pew Tree back toward downtown all the way to 1979.
Okay.
So with that in mind, what our grant experts, Ms. Langford, suggested was we needed not to ask for 4 projects, we needed to ask for 1 project, 1 big project. And so after we got Mr. Kirk, who's here tonight, I think y'all haven't seen him yet, but he's about to step up and talk to us. He has, you recall, Freeland and Kirk was the winners of was selected as best value for the city. We've engaged in a contract to work on this grant mitigation grant activity, and he's going to talk to us now about this one major project and explain to us what we're trying to go off and go to. So with that, we go back up one slide. Back up. Yeah. So the current plan for the grant is to install new water pipes and abandon the old pipes. We're not going to pull them out. We're going to leave them under this and just stop using them. That seems to be the safest and cheapest solution to that problem. We're going to install buried drainage culverts to handle rain events for water coming from the field behind Highway 80 and Northwest River Roads. And the intent is to divert that water into the culverts and take it to the river. Replace Northwest River Road between Lockhart Street and Quail Run Road, adjusting the drainage and level so that no flooding occurs, and replace the culvert runs under Northwest River Road and Quail Run, expanding the intersection so that we quit compressing that culvert that's going through there. That's the preventative measure. It hasn't failed yet, but everybody looks at it, says, this is just a problem waiting to happen. And so now we're gonna go through the plan that you're gonna see some details of doing those things. Now, come on up here.
Larger version. Good evening. My name is Tom Kirk. I'm a principal with Freeland Turk Engineering Group. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. This is what I look like without a mask. So for about the last week or two, the mayor and I have been working pretty hard together to kind of define what this project is. So we spent some time on the road taking a look at all the drainage structures and the conditions along Northwest Road from the downtown area here all the way down past Quail Run. Took that information and we began to gather a lot of data. We made some site visits. We collected a lot of existing utility information. We looked at drainage patterns. This is the kind of information that, you know, we need to be able to properly conceive a project. And we were able to wrap that up last week, and we've been working diligently to come up with a concept and get that into a sketch that you can look at. I literally printed these out right before I left the office late this afternoon. This is hot off the press. So let me just explain the best that I can what our intent is and what we plan to do. I'm going to start in the upper left of this drawing at Quail Run and Northwest River Road. At that location, you have a pipe that's in very bad shape. There's some railroad ties on the north side of that pipe. It's in very poor condition. And then that pipe empties into kind of a small ravine that goes down to the San Marcos River. And that pipe and head wall is badly damaged and deteriorated. So as part of this project, we would reconstruct that pipe probably to a much larger type of culvert. To accomplish that, we're going to need some room for work, some easements, both upstream and downstream of that pipe. You notice we've got a 40 by 40 drainage easement shown on the north side. And then I believe there's a tract of land on the south that contains that ravine. And it probably would make sense just to acquire that entire parcel. And that enables us to get in and do the construction work and the grading that we need. And it enables the city of Martindale to maintain that structure in the future. So you would always have access to it, and you would be able to maintain it if and when you needed to. So, and by the way, that particular pipe there drains just about everything to the west and to the north. I think it's a county road 230 or 130, or I forget the name of the county road, but it extends past Highway 80. There's a culvert there at Highway 80, and all the water runs into the county road and then south through that culvert to this location. So there's quite a bit of water that eventually drains to this location. So it's no small structure. So from that location going back east, we're proposing a 24-foot wide brand new road with asphalt and curb. And it would look much like it does today, just a little wider, 24 feet, I think you have about 18 or 20-foot road now. And it would still have roadside ditches, just like it has now. And then, of course, that 24-foot road would extend throughout the project area all the way to Lockhart Street. When you get to this first curve here, you'll notice that we've got the curve inlets and storm drain shown here. If you're familiar with this area, you've probably seen the water ponding there. Very flat, the water just really has no place to go. And so we want to solve this problem by extending storm sewer up to the Plains Drive area into some box culverts that we're gonna propose. And that enables that whole curve system in there to properly drain. And then moving up to the north here, we're proposing an open channel to intercept flow that currently comes down from 80 and across that field. And we're taking it around to the Northwest River Road right away, like we've shown there. Right now, the water comes through that ditch in the field and then kind of crosses into that subdivision there. I don't know what the name of that subdivision is, but it crosses Plains Drive just south of the cul-de-sac and then goes in between all the houses and eventually makes its way out towards Lockhart Street. What we want to do with that channel is intercept that water, get it into the channel and funnel it into a pretty large multiple box culvert structure. In this way, we're controlling the water, putting it in the street right away, and we're providing quite a bit of relief from those homes that are in the Plains Drive area all the way down to almost Lockhart Street. So water, once it gets into the open channel, gets funneled into the multiple box culvert system, and that multiple box culvert extends all the way down Northwest River Road to the area where, what's the name of that private street? McCarty? What's the name of the private street where the lift station is?
Oh,
Madison. I think there's a sign, I think you know it as Madison Street, although it's a gravel driveway. But that's about the location where it turns and goes into another ravine that goes on down to the San Marcos River. Now, it's a major culvert system. We need some space to be able to construct this multiple box culvert. And we have a challenge of several existing utilities. Of note, along the north right-of-way line, there is a communications cable, underground buried communications cable, which is rather significant and rather expensive to relocate, and it takes quite a bit of time. So our strategy is to avoid it at all costs. We just want to stay away from it. Also on the north side, you have most of your overhead electric and internet and cable. We think we can get this built without touching those facilities. We have to do a few adjustments here and there, but for the most part, we'll be leaving it alone, which is good for everybody. And then there's an existing sanitary sewer line that's, of course, underground and exists more or less along the existing pavement side of the pavement on the north side. We're also going to leave that alone. So we have a lot of utilities on the north side, so we're going to expand a little bit to the left to make room for these culverts. And as the mayor said earlier, there's a water line on the south side of the right-of-way. A lot of that pipe is asbestos, so it really needs to be replaced anyway. So we're going to completely rebuild that water line to be nice and new and last a long time. And Mayor, this is even new. This is kind of hot off the press, but We also want to build a parallel sewer line on the south side as well. You may ask, well, why would we want to do that? Well, you have a large box culvert system and you have several sewer services that feed the houses on the south side of Northwest River Road. Well, we can't get those services through concrete box culverts. So we're going to build a parallel sewer line on that side that just services all those houses, and then we're going to tie back into the sewer line down there where it goes into the lift station.
So how's that gonna work? You gotta cross it somewhere.
We got to cross it somewhere, and based on the depth we got from the manhole the other day, we're going to be able to go over the sewer line, but yet stay underground. We've got about 10 foot to play with. The culverts that we're talking about are probably about 6 to 7 feet tall, so we can cross over that sewer line and still be 2 or 3 feet underground.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. Okay.
And then we've got a couple of key inlets here that we need. One is there's a 4-way inlet, and it's got 2 arrows. That 4-way inlet there that Jared is pointing to intercepts quite a bit of water that comes from the north and from the west. And it's just a big, large inlet that sucks in all that water and puts it into the culverts. There's another one right there that just drains the roadside ditches. And then the project continues to the west where we go to the Lockhart Road intersections. We'll completely rebuild the intersection to include replacing the existing culvert there just on the north side of the road. It's just like an old undersized pipe. Go ahead and replace that.
I don't even know. I think it's buried on
It's partially buried. So in order to build this thing and accommodate it in a long-term way, we're going to have to acquire some drainage easements, and they're shown on this sketch. We're also going to have to buy some right-of-way on the south side of Northwest River Road. The width of the right-of-way that we need varies, but we need about a total of 60 foot of right-of-way. And then some owners may experience perhaps 10, maybe 15 feet at the most of right-of-way, and some landowners that may vary a little. So it just kind of varies depending on where you are. But we need about 60 feet of total right-of-way width to accommodate all the utilities and to accommodate this box culvert system. Let's see.
So would that shift the road south some?
The road is going to be more or less in the center of the 60 feet. It might be a foot or two. We'll shift it one way or another when we get into design, but it's going to be more or less in the center. If it's not, you won't even know. You don't even know. We have not done a cost estimate because we wanted to get some feedback from the city first. That'll be our tour in the next week or so. But I'm pretty certain that it's below the 6.7 million max, and it's probably above the 3 million. So we should be kind of in there somewhere.
So let's go around now and ask questions. James, you got any questions about this?
Yes, I'm kind of concerned about, why you chose project 4 instead of more of the downtown area. Is there a reason for that?
Well, we were going to include this all the way to Main Street, but when Thomas got to looking at what's going on down at the intersection of 1979 and Main Street, it does get, 2 to 4 inches of water buildup. It seems to be related to when they built 1979 and changed the flow of traffic and put that curve in there, that they may or may not have done that. So we're going to try to get project 3 done by TxDOT. But this really didn't fit into the potential flood activity. So when you cut out project 3, now when you go explain to them, we're doing this for flood events, where are the flood events? Well, they're localized by the old schoolhouse there between the schoolhouse and the cemeteries. And that corner down there in front of Mike and the Glazes house, which definitely go underwater. Of course, all the traffic goes there. And then the Quail Run Road issue that's going to fail eventually. And now if we can get that taken care of, that's a preemptive strike to go off to make sure that doesn't happen. So when you tie one end as close to Lockhart Street and the intersection of Lockhart and Main, and you tie the other end of this project is at Quail Run Road, all to do with flooding, it makes a very good, we think it makes a very good story that's going to go get us an award. But by stretching it all the way to Maine in 1979, that kind of weakens the total. So it's a roll of the dice if you try to get it all in there. That isn't quite as strong as the roll of the dice of just doing the other three. So that's why we started out to do them all four, but in looking at it, Thomas pointed out that the people who review these things are going to spot this, and they're going to say, wait a minute, that one that really was created by TxDOT, let them go fix it, not make FEMA funds fix it. The others are created by natural forces, and it'll work. So that's how we got there, Jan. I don't know what
I just worry about how it looks like. We've got, 3 ex-mayors and a current mayor and a city council member that all live up and down that road. I just don't, I'm just worried about what people are going to think. Of how
the only thing I can say is that for 5 years or 6 years, I've been listening to us all, including myself, say how to fix these roads. We take money that has got an M on the end of it. Okay, it's got to have it's a million, and there's no magic money out there that's going to come into that level. We have an opportunity all of a sudden to get to that level of money. It has to be done wrapped around flooding issues. That's what the money came for, was to go address, and that's where we can address both roads and flooding. That's where it came from. I mean, I understand. I'm very sensitive to that myself.
Yeah.
But
I know.
But this is an opportunity. I don't think we could just not go at.
I agree. We need to take advantage of any grant we can qualify for. So your reasoning is that it's probably the one that we will most likely qualify for. We have the best chance to qualify for. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And it addresses flooding. I mean, nobody in town, anybody that lives in town knows that those two areas go underwater every time.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot more houses flooded. I'm not sure why that hadn't flooded before.
Well, this won't stop the river. I mean, although this is flood related money, there's nothing there that's going to stop a 15 flood. The new road will go underwater if it gets up to that high again, potentially.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because I saw that on your slide. I want everybody to be fully aware that the 100-year flood that comes from the river, the improvements that we're talking about will have no effect on that. That will continue to happen in the future. We can't undo that. But these improvements do significantly improve conditions for lesser storms, say the 10 or the 25-year storms. So there's a lot of benefit here. But like the mayor says, if you get another 15, year 15 storm, it's going to flood again.
In 15, the road to Quail Run was barely open. we had to drive through the field. The road was actually covered right there at that intersection. We had to drive just toward Highway 80 from there. The roads, of course, down by Mike's place, that closes basically even with little rains. And of course, in 15, the road by the school there, where the low spot, that was under about 4 feet of water. You couldn't drive through that. So the fear is that those big flood events closes down the exit point for everybody that lives along that road. Plains Drive people, all the people up and down Northwest River Road can get locked in if it happens in the middle of the night, and now you've got pulling them out of there in boats. We think that when we put these culverts under there, we're going to raise up the road a little bit in those places so that maybe it doesn't get cut off and you can get emergency exit people out of there. Now, if we have a 15 flood and it crosses like it did then, all that whole road is underwater, just about, except for down by the purse well. So that's not going to be addressed, and we can't do that for 6.7 million. Probably can't do it for 67 million, and maybe about 670 million. But this is what we can do, and we think we got a good shot at it. So,
can we get can we get a copy of these maps you've got?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That was certainly my question as well. I'd like to be able to see it in a more, small space.
Right.
Okay, there'll be copies, paper copies in your boxes down here, and
we have an email.
We got an email in, but as Thomas said, this is hot off the presses. They were working on this today, so
sure.
That's why we couldn't get out any earlier. Lisa, have you got any other questions or any questions other than that?
No, I'm certain that I will once I'm able to see it in its totality and not just in little blocks.
Okay, Sonia, how about you?
Yeah, I would just like to say that not to take advantage of this opportunity and this grant for this community it wouldn't be a good choice. I think with this, just know what you said, it's just more bang for our buck and one whole shot. You know, we're kind of like eliminating like the flooding right there in front of Mike the Class house, the two that goes across right there at
school.
Yes, at the school, but then also right there where the diesels keep hitting the 18-wheelers.
Right.
When they're coming out. So I see all that. I see where it is because I do live on Northwest River Road. Also, the other thing that you said that concerns me is like the asbestos in the pipe. That we could get that done. Like with anything, I think that's more of a, concerning, because anytime you hear asbestos, and especially if it's in pipes, then that's concerning. And if we could get that taken care of, then we need to jump on it.
The water department, Steve, again, I want to allay everybody's fears. The pipe was totally acceptable for years, continues to be acceptable, but it is something that was put in the 1960s. It was time to replace it, and the replacement is a better solution than just replacing in kind. Putting PVC in there, the new stuff. So that is a benefit that comes that will impact really everybody in the city, although it doesn't totally eliminate it all, but it does get us to take a step forward so that piece of it's gone.
And then I just wanted to add, because leaving it there just eliminates the possibility if you're digging it out, it breaks, then you have contamination that will go through the ground, then you're going to have to do the cleanup, which adds more cost. So just by leaving it there, you are, not taking the risk of anything or the asbestos leaking into the ground.
Yes.
What's the timeline of this project from start to finish, basically?
Yeah, it's measured in years. and I don't know that yet. We will get a look at that next week at our meeting when we approve the application. It'll have a timeline and prices associated with
Okay.
everything. The other piece that he's talked about, let's talk about this while if you'll zoom in on the quail run end of this thing. So Thomas is recommended that we purchase that corner that's outlined there, that 40 by 40 drainage easement activity, and 80 on the other side. Both of those sides of the roads are owned by the Conrad. It says Herbert Conrad, but I think Richard has control over that. So we'll have to talk with him. Move on down to the that one will work. Either one. We're looking for line 2.
Oh, okay.
There, right there. So up there in the upper right-hand corner of what you're seeing on the screen, that drainage ditch is all in Lorraine Harrison's field. I've talked to her, told her this was potentially coming, and of course, Lorraine, as you can imagine, well, as it helps Martindale, she'll be willing to go off and make that happen. And then if you go all the way down to that one right there, don't put it up, right and down there. The big one, that 100-foot easement across there, those go through the Creighton Spruill Cemetery and the downtown cemetery. So
Sir,
those
what are your expectations? Truth. At a Trump rally? Yeah.
So those favor that. The one piece that we haven't really considered yet and talked to everybody about is that little box that is a 4-way inlet box on the non-river side. That's the Rodriguez, the old teachers, school teachers, but that's the Rodriguez property. We'll have to go get people, them to sign up to allow us to go put that in there or buy it from a corner of their property. And then this easement along the riverside of Northwest River Road from the shoe tree to the schoolhouse, all of those property owners will be impacted. And I don't know the answer to this. I don't know if we're talking about buying the land or just paying them to let us put the thing underground and then.
No, that would be an actual fee simple acquisition. So you'll go buy the land. It'll become part of the roads right away.
Okay. So we're going to need to talk to all of those folks. I think most of them will agree that if we can fix the drainage, it'd be good for their property, et cetera. But that's going to be a trick that we're going to have to go handle in October when we talk to people. We got to be able to convince them that this is the right thing to do.
And then from a survey standpoint, those will be dedicated easements. It'll still be, I'm asking, it'll still be the property owner's property with a dedicated easement. Is that correct?
That's not what I thought I just heard.
Yeah. So on the drawing, there's property labeled as drainage easement. And for the drainage easements, the landowner will retain ownership of the property. You'll simply acquire a right to go in there and construct and maintain your drainage facility, whether it be an open ditch or an inlet or whatever. The acquisition along Northwest River Road, those are actual purchases of thin strips of property from the landowner that become the property of the city and incorporated into the road right away forever.
Okay, I have more questions, but I'll wait.
Yeah, we just need more details.
Well, I could actually, well.
It'd be good to ask him tonight so he can have a time to go get them answered if he doesn't know the answer.
Well, no, I mean, it's more the, not necessarily the where, it's more the logistics of the how. In just making sure that not just our residents are treated fairly and not run over, but at the same time, that the city obtains the proper rights to those easements so that work can be done. Just from a logistics standpoint is what I would want to sort of go over.
Let me address that. This is a federally funded property or project. If we get the grant, and you have to follow a whole lot of rules when that occurs.
Right.
One of those rules is how to acquire property at easement.
Right.
There is a very, very strict, regimented process that the city has to go through to buy that property. It starts out with contacting the landowner, doing an appraisal to get the value of the property. They go through a very rigid negotiation process where a fair offer is made to the landowner. The landowner has many options. He can choose not to accept that offer. He can go through administrative proceedings and on all the way through a trial by jury.
Yeah. I'm
So
aware.
in this overall process, the landowner is treated in a very fair and transparent manner and has all of their rights as landowners protected along the way.
Yeah,
There's no opportunity for backroom negotiations or anything like that. Gotta follow the rules.
No, absolutely. And I think I was more in reference to having that discussed out loud in sort of in the way that you just did, so that residents would also be aware that there is a step-by-step process that the city and or your firm has to follow according to the rules of the grant and of the state. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
As part of your citizen participation plan, I haven't read it in detail, but once you get into the design phase, there are public meetings where citizens of Martindale and others are invited to come, look at what the plans are, make comments, and during those events, there will be information on how the property will be acquired. There's pamphlets that we can give out. People are given the opportunity to read and ask questions, and there'll be contact information. So there'll be full disclosure and a lot of information to make people aware of how the process works.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you will have more water going into the river because normally it will be in the culverts and on the roadside. More water going into the river past homeowners. Is there any kind of filtration, rock filtration system that could be incorporated in these culverts? Because you'll have all this water draining off the road and then going into the river. What about some sort of rock or filtration system before it goes into the river?
Well, it would be our goal to design the system so that the amount of time that it takes for the water to get through the new system is about the same time that it took today. So if we're able to design it the way I want, if the conditions are right, there should be no change. The same amount of water will get to the river in the same amount of time. If that doesn't happen, we may have to put in some detention facilities. We simply don't know at this point. We'll add in some costs for that possibility, but at the level of design that we are at now, we won't know. Mm-hmm. Those are things that we'll figure out when we get into detailed design.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I know one of the things that we mentioned briefly, and it was a only if available back burner issue if our budget comes in lower than what we had thought when we were developing these plans. But addressing the bridge further down Northwest River Road, near where I think the duplexes or the apartments were flooded, and the 15 were old. lift station number 4 is currently. Have you visited that site? Are we even in the ballpark of looking at that at this point?
It's you know, if the estimate comes in much lower than the 6.7, we'll simply add that to the list.
Yeah.
Just replace that bridge. I don't know that we'll have enough money
Okay.
to bring a road out that whole way, but at least we can look at doing the bridge. So it's a contingency project right now.
Right. Right.
I've driven over it. I know what it looks like from the surface. I haven't been down in the ravine to inspect the, you know, the structural elements and everything. But I'm certainly aware of it. Yeah.
Let's go back to my slide. So, page 1 to the left. Don't mind. Go to the next one. Look, that one. Okay. So when we get through, the idea is when we get through Northwest River Road, we'll remain above water during major rain events. Flooding of yards in and around Plains Circle or the Plains Drive should be minimized. We've got some really bad pictures that show how bad those people are really getting flooded in their backyards right now. And we will improve the intersection of Quill Run Road to prevent potential water damage to the road and allow room for large vehicles to make the turn without damaging the culvert or signage that's there. That's the whole attempt of what we want to accomplish when we get through this. Go to the next one. The schedule for getting ready to go apply for the grant is very short here. So tonight we're reviewing it with the council and anybody else that wants to go listen. Next Tuesday, we've got to approve, the council needs to pass a resolution to say, yes, we're going to apply, which means they got to have an application ready for us to read sometime next week. My guess is it's going to come out by Friday at the latest. So it's going to be weekend homework, folks, and maybe Monday night homework for reading this thing when it does come out. We've got to publish in the newspapers that we're applying, and when we're having public hearings, to be able to put it in the 9/24 paper. Because anything past that, we missed the date. It's got to be in the paper 30 days before the application is due in. The application is due in on October 28th. That means it's got to be in the paper by 9/28. But the Lockhart Register only publishes on Thursdays. That means it's got to be in the paper by 9/24. And that means we got to tell them on 9/21, which is why next week is when we have to decide, yes, we're going to go try to apply. So that's why we're short order coming down to this. We got 2 public hearings planned in October. The exact dates are still TBD, but we've got to have 2 of those with some early notice on that. And then we want to go make sure that the landowners that are affected get personal invites to all that. So we'll be working that later this week. Try to go get the letters out ready to send. The grant submittal date is on 10/28, and that, Thomas, do you know how long they have from when we submit to when they have them scored?
I mean, Judy would know that.
Yeah, I haven't got that from Judy, and I'll get a better date, but I can't imagine it happening before next year, January or February. They're going to have thousands of these things come flying in, and they're going to have to go through scores, and they read them all. So I would think that early next year that we would find out if we won or not. If we didn't win, well, that'd be a bad thing for us. But the work would stop. If we did win, then there's probably at least 2 years before we do any kind of real construction. Do you think that's too long, Thomas? Or
that might be a little short.
Okay.
And there's long lead items when you get into design, really not but design, but it's the environmental review and the clearance process, and the well study. They have to go through a very rigorous environmental clearance process, and that could take year 2, 3 years. So, and then we've also, you can't wire property because of environmental clearance.
Okay.
So So once you get cleared, then you can go out and acquire the property. So
Probably 3 years at least,
not a bad.
from January, say from January 2021, so 22, 23, 24. We're talking about, January 24. Yeah, January 24 would be when we would maybe be starting construction. So this is gonna be a long-term thing. The goal for this council is to get it applied and win. If we do that, we better feel good about ourselves. So. Okay, that's all I got on agenda item 8. And with that, we are down to future items. Sonia, your review of the Skull Bridge parking area and what to do about that is on there. That's number 7. Thank you, Thomas. And anybody got anything else that I've forgotten to get on the list here? Okay. So with that in mind, we are down to, should we adjourn?
I'll
Sonia
second.
moves that we adjourn.
I second.
Lisa seconds it.
Aye.
And Jan says, yay. We are adjourned.
All right. Thank you, Thomas.
He's gone already.
Oh, is he? All right. Y'all have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jan.